Shalom, everyone. My name is Bracha Sima Cohan. I am a psychotherapist, a sex therapist, co-author of For Better, For Worse, Forever, Discover the Path to Lasting Love. I'm also a national speaker, a columnist, and I've been in the national media, radio, and television scene now for over 20 years. In the next 20 minutes, I want to try to teach you some of the things that I have learned over the past 35 years in working with people of all ages and stages in life. I have a master's degree in clinical social work from McGill University in Montreal, Canada. I have postgraduate specialization in marriage and family therapy and sexual dysfunction, and over 35 years of clinical experience. And one of the things that I have really learned over the years is that we cannot learn too much about relationships, and that relationship education for all of us is key if, in fact, we are going to be able to find and maintain and sustain successful relationships. And for that to happen, there are 4 things that I want to talk with you about. Number 1, in order to be able to have a successful relationship with anybody, we ourselves need to be in a really good place emotionally and psychologically and psychiatrically. So that if you happen to have what I call skeletons in the closet, if you're dealing with issues like depression or anxiety or bipolar disorder or addictions of any kind, it is really, really important that you take the responsibility to acknowledge and address and resolve, not just to talk about, well, I need to take care of this at some point in my life, the issues, because unless you do, you are not going to be able to have a successful relationship with anybody. So first, we have to be in a good place emotionally and psychiatrically before we're going to be able to have a successful relationship with anybody else. So number 1, the successful relationship really first begins with ourselves. Number 2, when we're looking at this whole complicated area of relationships, we need to make a commitment again to ourselves to learn about what ingredients really go into a healthy relationship. I think, again, most people, we haven't had the opportunity to be taught. If we haven't been fortunate enough to learn it in our homes, and they certainly do little, if any, relationship education in school, we're really left to our own devices. And if you look at the media, at the the general media in our lives, I mean, look at the role models that we have. They're not really good. So again, we need to say to ourselves, I have a learning curve here, and I am committed to really learning about successful and healthy relationships. Number 3, which is what I'm going to focus on in this presentation, is how to rate your mate. We need to be able to do good evaluations when it comes to assessing who's right for us and who's wrong for us before we commit to a serious relationship like a marriage. And I think it's great that we have the shadchans and we have the family support, but you need to know, and again, you need to be committed to learning about all of the different things that go into a really, really in-depth assessment so that you don't end up saying a year or 2 after, oh my goodness, who am I with? I didn't realize all of the different areas and all of the different issues that I needed to consider before I said I do. And number 4, people will ask me all the time, what are the 2 most important areas that make or break relationships? It's not money. It's not having a house full of children. It's not having a big house. As unromantic as it may sound, the 2 most important issues are emotional communication and problem solving. So right now, I'm going to begin to talk about my book, which is For Better, for Worse, Forever, Discover the Path to Lasting Love, and where I did research in order to help people figure out all of the different areas that they need to look at in terms of doing in-depth assessments about finding out who their partner is and who their partner isn't. So we're going to begin at the beginning. And the first area that we really need to check out, remember, you're not going to be putting your partners on trial, but you're going to look at family background, because the acorn does not fall far from the tree. So in getting to know your partner, you want to ask a lot of questions. What did he or she learn about relationships? And of course, we learn about relationships consciously or unconsciously, you know, in looking at mom and dad and in observing their relationship. So what went on? What was the communication like? Was there abuse of any kind? Were the relationships healthy and open and loving? And you need to ask your partner, you know, what did you learn, and what are the things that you would like to bring in to our relationship and to a potential marriage with me? And also, what are some of the things that you learned that you really want to be sure that you are not going to bring in? And people have to be conscious about this. You know, people will say to me all the time, well, you know, I never saw mom and dad argue. Well, you know, that may have been that they discussed their issues behind closed doors. But people do argue, and you want to know whether or not your partner learned that it's okay to have differences and issues, and not just avoid and deny and pretend that everything is okay, as mom and dad may have, because you're going to be headed for some real problems if you have not learned the art of emotional communication and problem solving. So you're going to be doing a lot of detective work in terms of finding out about what did and didn't go on into your partner's family of origin. And of course, your partner needs to be finding out about what did and didn't happen in your own family as well. Number two, I call this skeletons in the closet. And these are things that are not obvious, and these are things that maybe are not politically correct to be talking about or asking about. But you do need to know about whether or not your partner has issues with psychiatric problems like depression or anxiety or bipolar disorder, whether or not he or she has addictions of various kinds, whether or not we're talking about substance abuse, whether or not we're talking about pornography, whether or not there has been early child sexual abuse or sexual assault in one's life. And you might say, well, you know, these things have happened, but I can tell you as a psychotherapist who's been dealing with these kinds of issues for over 35 years, that unless these problems are acknowledged and addressed and resolved, they are going to come into your relationship. They are going to play havoc with your marriage, which is going to impact your marriage, it's going to impact your family, it's going to impact your children up the road. So things need to be dealt with, and you need to be the detective, and you need to find out, you know, are there, and what are the skeletons in the closet that will definitely impede your relationship unless they are taken care of. So not just, okay, I need to someday deal with my depression, but you want to see people say, yes, I have a problem, I'm going to deal with it, and yes, here's the resolution. Otherwise, as I say, it's like, it's the jack-in-the-box phenomenon. It'll pop up at times, and you're going to say, oh my goodness, you know, what did I miss? So these things really need to get taken care of. And again, as I say, you're not wanting to put somebody on, you know, on trial, but in conversation, you need to find out who your partner is and isn't across the board. Then we get into the area of communication. communication and problem solving. In my view, the two most important areas that really do make or break relationships. I'm not talking about where are we going to go for dinner, or what kind of a sofa we're going to buy. I mean, that's fun, and that's really easy to talk about. But you want to find out whether or not your partner is capable of real intimate communication. Is he or she able to express love and respect and anger and disappointment and the full gamut of emotions? Or on the other hand, are you with somebody who just shuts down and says, I don't want to talk about it? And the I don't want to talk about it again, it's going to build and it's going to build, and before long, it may be a year, it may be 2 years, there's going to be an explosion. So you want somebody who, if their communication skills, and you have to look at your own communication skills as well, if there is a learning curve to learn how to say it, where to say it, if to say it, when to say it, and how to do all of this well. I mean, we can all certainly never learn too much about effective communication and problem solving. And then we get to the area of problem solving. And again, people will say to me all the time, well, we never argue, as if that's something that's a good thing. Well, arguing and having dicey situations occur in your intimate relationships, I mean, that's just a part of life. And you need to know that your partner and you have the skill, because this is really about skill in knowing how to negotiate differences. So when I'm talking about effective problem solving, you need to find out whether or not you're able to discuss. Are you able to negotiate differences? Compromise and trade-offs are absolutely critical. We're never going to get exactly what we want all of the time, even though it may be nice to think that we will, but for the most part, that's not going to happen. And when you're looking, again, at effective problem solving, what do you want the outcome to be? Well, if a couple is going to have a successful marriage, there needs to be a win-win resolution. You're not looking to win, and you're not looking for the other person to lose. And this is where the negotiation process, and you're looking to see, where can we compromise? What kind of trade-offs can we make? We're not going to get exactly what we want, but we want to come out feeling that we have both ended up in a win-win resolution situation where you're feeling maybe not wonderful that you didn't get exactly what you want, but you're feeling good enough that the two of you have been able to work through the issue, whatever that issue is. Then we're looking at emotional intimacy, another area, okay? Is my partner capable of empathy, okay, of compassion, of sensitivity? If I'm hurt, do I have somebody who I can count on to say, look, honey, what can I do? Or is it somebody who just wants to avoid differences at all costs, and where you really end up feeling alone? I mean, naturally, you're not going to know all of this until you're married. But you can get a pretty good idea as you're getting to know somebody. Are they capable? Are they really capable of giving you the kind of compassion and loyalty and trust? I mean, these are all such basic but important issues that, again, they have to be present if you are going to have a successful long-term relationship. So yes, you're asking a lot of questions, you're observing, you're looking, you're listening. It's a wonderful idea to spend time with people's friends, because you're able to pick up a lot of information when you observe, how your partner treats the waitress. How does your partner treat mom and dad? How does your partner deal with friends? Again, when things aren't always just looking wonderfully perfect, and again, dicey is a part of life, and that is when we really need to count on our skills to get through different kinds of problems that we may be facing. And then we talk about sex, sexual compatibility. And one of the things, and I have been working with Orthodox couples for years and years, there needs to be chemistry. There needs to be a feeling of passion, even if you never touch, if you never kiss until you're married. There needs to be that kind of sexual desire, even though you're not going to be acting on it. The one thing I can't teach, and when I wear my sex therapist hat, I can teach all kinds of things when people are running into problems sexually in their marriages, but I cannot teach chemistry. So you have to be really honest with yourself. Is that elusive chemistry present? And hopefully it's going to be, because otherwise, again, as I've seen over the years, this can really cause and does cause a lot of problems. Then we need to look at past relationships. And for people who are marrying partners who've been previously married, you have to ask yourself some very important questions. Do I want to be a step-parent? How am I going to deal with the exes? Do I want to deal with visitation? Do I want to start to deal with the fact that his children or my children, they don't want to have anything to do with my new husband to be? And the number one thing that can really play havoc with second marriages are the children. So there is a lot of discussion that needs to take place if people are marrying for the second and third time, and if you're having to deal with children, not only young children, but adult children as well. It can really, really cause a lot of tension and a lot of problems unless there is not a lot of emotional communication, and that you're pretty much on the same page about how issues, and of course, we don't know exactly how things are going to play themselves out until things happen, but a lot of dialogue about second marriages and children need to take place if you are planning to marry somebody who has been previously married. Then I talk about deal breakers, okay? I did a workshop recently at a synagogue, an Orthodox synagogue on the Upper West Side, and there was a money manager who preceded my seminar. And, he was saying that people frequently will not talk about money. They will not talk about lifestyle. They frequently do not address goals and values. And these are very important basic things that need to be discussed. Our hopes, our dreams, our goals, children, how religious, what kind of a religious family life do we want? And again, even though we might be getting into areas that are difficult to talk about, they need to be talked about. And my bias is that they need to be talked about before you say I do, before you get married. So that, there are going to be enough surprises after we all get married. But you have to have a pretty good sense where your partner is. Do you share enough in terms of values and goals across the board so that you're going to begin with a pretty solid foundation? As we go through this exercise, people might be saying, oh my goodness, she's thinking that there's such a thing as the perfect partner, and I can assure you that the perfect partner does not exist. I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, nobody's perfect. But in going through this assessment process at the end, you have to ask yourself three very basic but very, very important questions. And I ask people to actually write this down. Number one, what do I want and need in a long-term marriage. Okay, so you're going to write down all the things that are really important to you. Number 2, what do I not want and not need in a long-term relationship? And again, you have to be really, really honest with yourselves. And number 3, describe my relationship. Okay, describe as you go through the communication, the problem solving, the emotional intimacy. And what I have frequently found, if people are really honest with themselves, is what they say that they really want and need are things that they really don't have in their relationship. So, you know, this is a time for you to do some very serious soul searching. There is so much at stake if we fool ourselves. And if we go into marriages pretending that this isn't important and that isn't important, and there's certain things that are absolutely not compromisable, and I'm someone who is always wanting people to try to compromise and trade-offs and come up with a win-win resolution. Abuse of any kind is absolutely not something that you should ever compromise on, whether or not we're talking about verbal abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, substance abuse of any kind. I mean, you're headed for a disaster if you underscore the importance of not beginning in a relationship where you have these kinds of issues that your partner or you are not willing to acknowledge and address and resolve. Chemistry. Okay, if there is not chemistry, as I previously mentioned, you're really asking for trouble. So again, you have to be really honest with yourself. This is the soul-searching exercise that can really, make or break your life. I mean, this is serious business. And the final thing, again, that must be present if a marriage is to succeed is the emotional communication and problem-solving piece. So as you go through all of this, hopefully you're going to find that the pluses outweigh the minuses. But because you have, there are problems along the way, does not mean that you're going to say to your beloved or to your prospective kala, I don't want to marry you. But what needs to happen, I believe, and I believe this very strongly, wearing my psychotherapy hat, is that the issues and the problems need to be acknowledged and addressed and resolved. And if you go through this process, it's going to keep you safe. It's going to keep you really clear. You're going to have clarity about things that frequently people have really never thought about before. So I hope this has been a positive learning experience for you, and I wish you great success on your relationship path, and hope to talk to you all very soon again. Lehitraot. Bye-bye.